Intro hook. Sensational fast-paced U.S. Capitol News Energy. Narrator. November 2019. The winter wind is ripping through the open structural concrete of the Pearl River Horizon Plaza. Down on the ground, the project looks like a roaring hive of industrial activity. Over 2,000 concrete finishers, MEP engineers, and glazers are swarming the site. Tower A is topped out at 49 stories of bare, unclad reinforced concrete. Tower B is sitting at 40 stories. Tower C is holding at 28. Then, the clock hits exactly 5 p.m. Sound effect, industrial siren wailing narrator. The site supervisors receive a high priority. Encrypted digital directive straight from the corporate headquarters of Huaxin Global Holdings. The order is brief, cold, and total. Cease all structural operations immediately. Do not pour another cubic meter of concrete. Do not hoist another steel beam. Dismiss the night shifts. Shut down the power grids to the climbing formwork. Lock the gates. The workers walked off the site, thinking it was a temporary dispute over a single financial tranche. They had no idea that they would never return. They had no clue that this massive 1.2 billion complex had just entered a state of terminal architectural stasis. To understand the sheer engineering catastrophe of a frozen Supertail, you have to look at the raw, uncompromising physics of high-rise construction. A skyscraper is not a static object, it is a dynamic, highly pressurized ecosystem that demands constant maintenance, stress balancing, and environmental sealing even while it's being built. When Huaxin Global Holdings pulled the plug, the 3 towers were completely naked. Look at the structural state of the project at the moment of the freeze. The 3 towers together represent over 350,000 cubic meters of high-strength structural concrete. This concrete had been cast using advanced, self-climbing hydraulic formwork, designed to rise floor by floor in rapid 4-day cycles. But because the project stopped dead in its tracks, the top decks of all 3 towers were left completely unsealed. There is no roof membrane. There is no waterproofing layer. There is no external cladding on the upper 2/3 of the buildings. For 6 long years, from 2019 all the way to 2026, this raw, porous concrete has been sitting directly under the brutal, unforgiving elements. Sound effect. Heavy rumbling thunder and deluge rain. Narrator. Think about the climate here. The region is blasted by intense seasonal monsoon rains, extreme summer heat waves exceeding 40 degrees Celsius, and severe coastal typhoons. When millions of gallons of highly humid, acidic rainwater slam into an open-air construction site year after year, the water does exactly what nature designed it to do. It searches for a path downward. Without a functional roof or an external glass curtain wall, rainwater collects on the upper decks of the 49-story tower, forming massive, stagnant aerial lakes. This water then seeps deep into the unsealed concrete slabs through micro-fissures and construction joints. It migrates vertically down the core of the building, cascading down the open elevator shafts and pooling inside the dark, hollow lower levels. And this is where the hidden engineering nightmare begins. Embedded steel oxidation. Every single structural column, beam, and floor slab in the Pearl River Horizon Plaza relies on dense networks of heavy carbon steel rebar to handle tensile loads. Concrete is incredible at handling compression, the downward weight of the building, but it is brittle under tension. Steel rebar gives the tower its flexibility, its ability to sway in high winds and withstand seismic forces. But steel rebar has an absolute mortal enemy: moisture combined with oxygen, because the structural framing was left completely exposed. Thousands of metric tons of structural steel rebar extensions, the connection points meant to tie into the future glass facade and interior walls, have been left completely bare to the open sky. For 72 months, this steel has been rusting. When steel oxidizes, it undergoes a chemical transformation that causes it to expand up to 6 times its original volume. This internal expansion exerts an immense, destructive bursting pressure inside the cured concrete slab, a phenomenon civil engineers call concrete spalling. The expanding rust literally cracks the concrete from the inside out, causing massive chunks of the structural facade to flake off and plummet hundreds of feet down to the abandoned retail podium below. The structural engineering community has been tracking this decay with growing horror. Reports from independent structural surveys suggests that the rebar corrosion in the unclad upper zones of Tower A may have already compromised the structural integrity of the peripheral tie beams. And then, there is the issue of the cranes. 4 massive, heavy-duty tower cranes remain anchored to the external concrete cores of these buildings, frozen in midair since late 2019. These are not small pieces of equipment. They are industrial titans designed to lift multi-ton steel beams. Normally, tower cranes are subject to strict, weekly mechanical inspections, magnetic particle testing on critical welds, and constant lubrication of their slewing rings. For 6 years, these cranes have received zero maintenance. Their gears are locking up with rust. Their counterweights are subjected to unpredictable aerodynamic loads during severe storm seasons. They have essentially become 4 massive, unmonitored structural pendulums hanging hundreds of meters directly above one of the most heavily trafficked urban corridors in the country. The local district housing bureau has issued frantic notices, warning that a catastrophic mechanical failure on just one of these rusted crane mounts could send tons of industrial steel crashing down through the roof of the active sports arena right across the street. But why hasn't anyone stepped in to take them down? Why hasn't the Municipal Construction Commission seized the site, ordered a controlled demolition of the dangerous upper floors, or forced a sale? Because of an absolute, unbreakable regulatory deadlock in the domestic real estate market. Land use rights and private corporate development assets are protected by intense, highly complex legal frameworks. Even though Huaxin Global Holdings is functionally insolvent and its stock has plummeted to near zero value on the regional exchange, the asset itself is locked behind a massive wall of litigation. Over 700 distinct creditors have filed formal property lines and asset freezing injunctions against the Pearl River Horizon. This includes massive state-backed construction conglomerates, Tier 1 structural engineering firms like the regional branches of the China Construction Bureau, mechanical subcontractors, electrical suppliers, and international luxury hotel partners. Every single one of these entities is fighting for a piece of the corporate carcass. The total value of these overlapping, unresolved, court-ordered liens now exceeds a staggering 900 million yuan. Legally, the local municipal government cannot touch, modify, or demolish a single square meter of this building without violating the active court orders of the high courts handling the bankruptcy liquidation. The city is completely powerless. They are forced to sit on the sidelines and watch a $1.2 billion architectural flagship slowly transform into a rusted, graffiti-covered monument to structural neglect. And time is officially running out. The countdown to the 2028 mega events is ticking down every single second. The international media will arrive. The cameras will pan across the hypermodern sports complex. And right there in the frame will be 49 stories of raw, decaying concrete. Type next or Dalier to proceed to part 3. Narrator. To fully comprehend the sheer scale of the crisis at the Pearl River Horizon Plaza, you have to look beyond this single construction site. This isn't an isolated structural malfunction or a one-off corporate miscalculation. When civil engineers and urban planners analyze the frozen skeletons of these 3 towers, they see terrifying parallels to a broader, systemic architectural vulnerability that has plagued high-density developments across the nation's major economic corridors. Look at the structural history of mega-project halts in our fast-growing Tier 1 and Tier 2 hubs. Sound effect. Dramatic reverberating gong-gong narrator. Take the infamous case of the Golden Finance 117 Tower in Tianjin, a colossal 117-story diamond-capped supertall that was designed to be a crowning jewel of modern structural engineering. Construction began with maximum fanfare, pouring millions of tons of high-performance reinforced concrete into the earth. But just like the Pearl River Horizon Plaza, a sudden, devastating shift in capital flow and corporate liquidity slammed the brakes on development. The structural framing was left completely exposed to the harsh northern winters, creating a massive 597-meter concrete ghost tower that pierces the skyline as a stark, permanent warning of unchecked capital dependency. Or look at the abandoned megaba blocks and luxury high-rises along the coastlines of Hainan and the outer sectors of Wuhan and Chongqing. Across these booming urban zones, entire clusters of high-density residential and commercial towers sit totally dark, structurally complete but functionally dead. The glass curtain walls are missing, the interior elevator banks are empty concrete shafts, and the foundational footings are left to grapple with soil settlement issues without the stabilizing weight of finished, occupied structures. The common denominator across all of these engineering disasters? The devastating physical impact of structural stasis. When a megaproject like the Pearl River Horizon Plaza is halted mid-build, it undergoes a completely different set of physical stresses than a completed, sealed skyscraper. Civil engineers from the China Academy of Building Research have repeatedly pointed out that high-rise structures are designed to be dynamic, load-bearing systems that perform optimally only when they are fully built, stabilized, and sealed from the elements. Consider the phenomenon of differential settlement. A massive three-tower complex like the Pearl River Horizon Plaza exerts millions of metric tons of downward force onto its subterranean foundation pile network. These piles are driven deep into the soft alluvial soil layers characteristic of the Pearl River Delta region. During normal construction, this weight is added in a controlled, predictable progression, allowing structural engineers to monitor and adjust for the minute, millimeter-level shifting of the earth below. But when you abruptly freeze a project for 6 years, with Tower A sitting at 49 stories, Tower B at 40, and Tower C at 28, you create a massive permanent imbalance in the foundational loading profile. The unequal distribution of weight across the shared 4.6-acre underground podium forces the underlying soil layers to compress unevenly. Over 72 months of shifting water tables and intense monsoon seasons, this differential settlement can introduce microcracks into the thick foundational concrete mat itself. If the foundational mat cracks, subterranean groundwater, laden with corrosive industrial runoff, can seep directly into the primary tension piles, initiating a silent, invisible decay of the building's absolute base. And then there is the severe risk of wind-induced structural fatigue. Sound effect? Roaring Tiphun wind corridor effects? Narrator. A completed skyscraper is wrapped in a highly engineered skin, a continuous glass and aluminum curtain wall system. This facade isn't just cosmetic, it acts as an aerodynamic shield, smoothly deflecting high-velocity winds around the perimeter of the building and preventing air pressure from building up inside the structure. The Pearl River Horizon Plaza has no skin. For the upper 30 stories of Tower A and B, there is nothing but an open, skeletal grid of bare concrete columns and floor slabs. When a Category 4 typhoon rips through the coastal region, the raging winds don't glide past the building. Instead, they blast directly into the structure, creating a massive, high-pressure sail effect on every single open floor. The wind forces are trapped inside the bare concrete bays, generating immense upward and downward aerodynamic pressures, a phenomenon structural engineers call wind tunnel lift. This puts an unprecedented, cyclical twisting stress on the primary beam column joints that the building was never designed to endure for years on end. Every major storm cycle that pummels this metropolis slowly chips away at the structural fatigue life of the exposed concrete joints, silently advancing the timeline toward a potentially catastrophic structural failure. Yet, despite these escalating engineering warnings, the site remains totally frozen. Why? Because the corporate entity that gave it life has systematically disintegrated. Huaxin Global Holdings, the once mighty real estate conglomerate that boasted over 130 billion yuan in assets, is today a hollow corporate shell. The downfall was swift and brutal. When regional banking regulators implemented strict financial metrics to curb excessive corporate debt in the property sector, Huaxin's highly leveraged business model instantly collapsed. They could no longer issue new bonds to pay off old debts. Their domestic credit lines were instantly frozen. By 2021, the stress became too much for the boardroom. Billionaire chairman Li Zhiqiang, the visionary who had personally signed off on the $1.2 billion plaza, was forced to step down in disgrace, stripped of his administrative authority. By late 2023, Huaxin's shares on the regional exchange had lost more than 95% of their peak value, before trading was suspended entirely to prevent a total market panic. The company didn't just fail, it vanished into a legal black hole, leaving behind an abandoned, multi-tower structural hazard right in the heart of our most valuable urban corridor. A hazard that is now being claimed by a completely unexpected force. To type next or Dalia to proceed to part 4. Narrator, behind the grand macroeconomic numbers, the cold court injunctions, and the thousands of tons of decaying structural concrete, lies the true tragedy of the Pearl River Horizon Plaza, the shattering human toll. When a multi-billion yuan megaproject freezes mid-stride, it doesn't just halt the cranes. It demolishes the livelihoods, the life savings, and the futures of thousands of real people. Let's talk about the buyers. Sound effect. Solemn drifting piano melody with low cello undertalk narrator. Meet Zhang Wei. In 2017, Zhang was a highly successful tech consultant working in the neighboring high-tech hubs of Shenzhen and Guangzhou. He wanted to secure a permanent home for his aging parents and his young family in the center of this booming Tier 1 metropolis. The marketing campaign for the Pearl River Horizon Plaza was intoxicating. Zhang was shown ultra-luxurious, virtual reality walkthroughs of a 35th-floor premium suite in Tower B, complete with a panoramic view of the glittering sports arena, triple-glazed custom acoustic windows, smart home automation, and direct elevator access to the exclusive 5-star luxury hotel podium below. Believing this was the ultimate foolproof investment in a premium urban asset, Zhang signed a purchase agreement. He didn't just put down a standard deposit. To secure a preferential financing rate offered by Huashen Global Holdings, Zhang transferred a staggering 4.5 million yuan, over $650,000, representing his entire life savings, plus an additional loan secured against his parents' modest apartment in Wuhan. Today, Zhang Wei owns absolutely nothing but a thick stack of worthless paper contracts, unfulfilled corporate promises, and a crushing monthly bank loan statement. His money isn't sitting in a safe escrow account. It was pulled down by the developer in the early tranches and instantly swallowed up by the foundational structural costs of a building that has no walls. Zhang cannot move into his property. He cannot sell his contract because the asset is locked by court-ordered asset freezing injunctions. He is legally obligated to continue paying interest on a massive bank loan for an empty, unclad concrete cage open to the monsoonal winds. Zhang's story is not unique. Approximately 400 other middle-class and elite buyers across the region are trapped in this exact financial purgatory, watching their hard-earned capital dissolve into the rusting steel framework of Tower B. But the financial bleeding spreads far deeper into the industrial supply chain. Consider the plight of Chen Jin, a Tier 2 mechanical and electrical subcontractor based out of Chengdu. Chen's specialized engineering firm was contracted by the primary builder, the regional branch of the state-owned construction bureau, to install the massive, high-voltage electrical risers and bus duct systems through the core of Tower H's crew, worked around the clock throughout 2018 and early 2019. To meet the aggressive construction schedule imposed by Chairman Li Qiqiang, Chen had to personally finance the procurement of millions of yuan worth of specialized, high-grade copper cabling and industrial transformers from suppliers in Shanghai and Hangzhou. He took out short-term high-interest commercial lines of credit, fully expecting to be reimbursed through the standard milestone tranches. When the site abruptly shut down in November 2019, Chen Jin was left holding unpaid invoices totaling more than 28 million yuan. Huashen Global Holdings simply stopped answering his calls. The main contractor pulled off the site, claiming they were owed tens of millions themselves and could not cover the subcontractors. The financial shockwave was instantaneous and lethal for Chen's business. He could not pay his suppliers. He could not cover the back wages owed to his team of over 120 skilled electricians and laborers. Within 6 months, Chen's engineering company was forced into involuntary liquidation. His equipment was seized, his personal assets were frozen by local courts, and a business that took 20 years to build vanished into thin air. Sound effect. Harsh metallic industrial clang with long reverb narrator. And what about the frontline construction workers themselves? The true muscle that raised these towers up into the clouds? When the project froze, more than 2,000 migrant construction workers, carpenters, concrete finishers, crane operators, and welders who had traveled from rural provinces like Henan, Sichuan, and Anhui were instantly cast adrift. Many of them had been living in temporary modular worker villages erected around the perimeter of the 4.6-acre site. They were sent home without their final 3 months of wages. For a construction worker relying on those monthly stipends to pay for their children's school tuition or basic medical care for elderly relatives back home, the sudden stoppage was an absolute catastrophe. While regional labor bureaus scrambled to provide emergency relief and legal assistance, extracting those funds from a collapsing, complex conglomerate like Huaxin has proved to be an agonizingly slow, multi-year bureaucratic nightmare. As the years rolled by and the site remained a silent, desolate ghost town, the human element took a completely bizarre, unprecedented turn in 2024, with the perimeter fencing decaying and security guards walking off due to unpaid wages. The 3 naked concrete towers became an irresistible magnet for an entirely different demographic. The region's underground extreme sports community and rogue urban graffiti crews, sound effect, spray can rattling and shaking, hissing of pint narrator. In early 2024, a highly organized group of midnight street artists managed to breach the perimeter security barriers of the Pearl River Horizon Plaza. Carrying hundreds of cans of industrial-grade aerosol paint, heavy rollers, and climbing harnesses, they scaled the pitch-black, unlit concrete stairwells of Tower floor by floor, from the 20th story all the way up to the absolute 49th floor rooftop deck. They turned the bare, gray structural concrete facade into a towering, multicolored canvas. They painted massive, stylized Chinese characters, abstract murals, and surrealist icons across the outward-facing perimeter beams. When the city woke up the next morning, the skyline had been completely transformed. The local media quickly caught wind of the spectacle, and the local press dubbed it the largest illegal vertical art installation in the country's architectural history. For the youth and the artistic community, it became a viral anti-corporate symbol, a visual protest against the excesses of runaway property speculation. But for the municipal authorities, it was an absolute, high-voltage public embarrassment. The District Housing Bureau and the Municipal City Management Commission were furious. They issued immediate, high-priority citations to Huaxin Global's remaining local administrative staff for severe blight violations, lack of site security, and creating a massive cosmetic hazard in the center of the prime economic zone. The fine they levied? A grand total of 22,000 yuan, roughly $3,000. Think about the utter absurdity of that math. A $1.2 billion Supertail disaster site, a multi-tower structural hazard that has destroyed the finances of hundreds of families, is issued a penalty that amounts to a rounding error on a luxury dinner bill. Why? Because under the existing regional municipal codes, 22,000 yuan was the absolute statutory maximum fine that could be issued for a cosmetic blight violation on a private commercial property. The city had no legal framework to scale the penalty to the actual multi-billion yuan size of the structural disaster. The fine was paid by a remaining Huaxin subsidiary shell company within 24 hours, but the graffiti remained. No one had the money or the legal authorization to erect the massive scaffolding systems required to scrub or paint over 49 floors of structural concrete. So the murals sit there today, baking in the intense summer sun, flaking off along with the spalling concrete chunks, directly overlooking the pristine multi-million yuan sports stadium where elite athletes compete. A stark, brightly colored, unavoidable reminder to every single citizen that inside this hypermodern metropolis, something has gone catastrophically, structurally wrong. Type next or DALI to proceed to Part 5, the final chapter of our investigation. Narrator. Now, we have to look directly into the eye of the storm. The year is 2026. The absolute final countdown has officially begun. The local organizing committee for the 2028 National Games and the International Trade Expo has already launched its high-budget promotional campaigns. The official digital renderings show a flawless, hyper-futuristic downtown skyline, gleaming glass facades, lush vertical gardens, and pristine, multi-lane transit corridors designed to welcome millions of global visitors and dignitaries. But not a single one of those official renderings includes 3 decaying, 49-story concrete skeletons covered in unauthorized street art. Sitting exactly 150 meters away from the main VIP entry gates of the primary sports arena, the municipal government is facing an absolute logistical and psychological wall. They are caught in a brutal race against the calendar, and the engineering math simply does not add up. Sound effect, rapid, ticking digital, cold transition narrator. Let's look at the cold, hard engineering reality of what it actually takes to salvage a frozen Supertail. Even if a massive, state-backed rescue conglomerate steps in tomorrow morning, signs a master acquisition contract, sweeps away the 700 conflicting creditor liens, and pumps unlimited billions back into the site, the project cannot just magically restart before a single pane of glass can be hoisted. Structural engineers will have to spend at least 6 months conducting ultra-high precision, non-destructive testing on every single square meter of the existing structure. They will have to run core drilling tests to check the compressive strength of the concrete slabs that have been baking and freezing for 6 years. They will have to use ground-penetrating radar to map the internal corrosion levels of the embedded steel rebar. Thousands of metric tons of compromised concrete will likely have to be hydro-demolished and recast. The installation of a custom-engineered glass curtain wall across 3 high-rise towers takes a minimum of 18 months of continuous, high-intensity mechanical labor, fitting out the interior mechanical, electrical, and plumbing infrastructure, the complex HVAC systems, the high-speed fire-rated elevator banks, the water purification grids, requires another 2 years. Total minimum timeline to bring the Pearl River Horizon Plaza from its current rotting, skeletal state to a finished, occupied, code-compliant luxury complex? 4 to 5 years of non-stop construction. The mega events open in exactly 2 years. The structural equation is officially broken. There is absolutely zero physical scenario in which these 3 towers are finished, glittering, and occupied by the time the opening ceremonies begin. That door was slammed shut the exact second Huashan Global Holdings cut the power to the cranes in late 2019. So what are the actual future scenarios for the Pearl River Horizon Plaza as the clock runs down to 2028? The engineering and municipal planning G communities are locked in a fierce, behind-the-scenes debate over 3 distinct paths forward. Sound effect, heavy industrial synth, Clenerator. Scenario 1, the emergency cosmetic shield. Under this high-pressure plan, the local municipal construction commission would bypass the long-term structural completion of the building entirely for the duration of the games. Instead, they would erect a massive, unprecedented engineering scaffold around all 3 towers, warping all 49 stories of Tower A, 40 stories of Tower B, and 28 stories of Tower C in thousands of square meters of specialized, high-strength architectural mesh or giant, illuminated digital media scrims. This would effectively turn the $1.2 billion structural disaster into a multi-acre billboard, hiding the rusted rebar, the spalling concrete, and the illegal graffiti from the lenses of the international media. The cost for a temporary cosmetic cover-up of this scale? An estimated 80 million yuan. 80 million yuan spent purely on a temporary visual band-aid, without fixing a single cracked beam or paying back a single ruined buyer like Zhang Wei. Scenario 2. Forced judicial liquidation and accelerated demolition. In this scenario, the high courts would issue an extraordinary administrative decree, stripping Huaxin Global and its 700 creditors of their property rights, under an emergency public welfare and safety mandate. The site would be handed over to a state-backed demolition enterprise, but demolishing a massive, 3-tower reinforced concrete complex in the absolute dead center of a hyper-dense, Tier 1 urban core is an engineering nightmare of epic proportions. You cannot use controlled explosives. The explosive shockwave and the resulting dust cloud would shatter the advanced glass structures of the active sports arena across the street and cripple the subterranean subway lines running directly beneath the site's 4.6-acre footprint. The towers would have to be painstakingly dismantled floor by floor, using heavy hydraulic crushing jaws mounted on top of the buildings slowly eating away at the concrete from the top down. A mechanical demolition of that scale would take at least 3 years, ensuring that instead of a static ghost tower, visitors to the 2028 Games would be greeted by a roaring, high-decibel, ultra-dusty industrial demolition zone. Scenario 3. The living warning. The final option, the most painful, yet the most likely. The city does nothing. The court battles drag on. The bankruptcy auction deadlines are extended for the 5th, 6th, and 7th times because no douchebag buyer is willing to absorb the massive, toxic pile of debt and structural liabilities left behind by Huaxin Global. The towers are left standing exactly as they are today, naked, skeletal, and covered in towering murals. They become an official, permanent fixture of the city's landscape during the international events. A monument to the absolute limits of runaway property speculation and unhedged capital dependency. Every city that has rushed to build ultra-luxury real estate empires without enforcing strict third-party completion bonds, without demanding ironclad sovereign risk protections, and without asking what happens when the financial tides turn. Every single one of those cities is running the exact same bet that this metropolis ran. Some of them just haven't lost yet. Drop a comment below. If you were the head of the Municipal Construction Commission, what would you do with the Pearl River Horizon Plaza before the world arrives in 2028? Would you spend millions to hide it behind a giant digital screen? Spend years carefully tearing it down, or leave it standing tall as a brutal warning to the rest of the world? Hit that subscribe button.